Hello, friends. Welcome to another episode of the Simple 7 Lifestyle Podcast. I am Dr. Jerry Duggar, and I just want to thank you for taking a few minutes today and joining me on this episode. It says a lot about you that in your free time, you would choose to learn more about health and learn more about ways that you can improve your life. So congratulations to you. I hope that today's content will be beneficial for you, and that you can not only learn more, but you can apply this information and put it to good use. So without further ado, let's dive in today. So if you were to ask just about anyone, what are the key habits to, improving your health and feeling better? I would bet that 99% of those people would say, eat a healthy diet and exercise, right? We've done a pretty good job of kind of drilling those two habits into people's minds. Unfortunately, we're not as good at actually incorporating those two habits as a population, but at least we know that they're important. Now, of course, around here, we talk about 5 other really key health habits within the Simple 7 lifestyle model. But today we want to focus on movement and exercise and really help you understand how to maximize your time spent doing these things and maximize their impact on your health. Okay. So, I get a lot of questions from my patients and clients about exercise. Questions like, what's the best form of exercise? Is exercise always good for me? How much exercise is enough? I mean, those are pretty routine questions to field. And they're not bad questions, but they're more fundamental questions that need to be asked first. And so that's what I want to dive into a little bit here with you. So what are those key questions, those fundamental questions when it comes to movement and exercise? Well, I would say the most important question is, what are your goals? What are your objectives? What are you trying to do? It's really important to be clear on what we're trying to accomplish with movement and exercise. That's going to determine to a huge degree the details of how we construct a strategy or a plan, right? Is weight loss a top goal? Do you want to look a certain way? Do you want muscles in a certain place? Is this sport specific or performance specific? Do you just want to feel a certain way? So kind of that objective, I think the why is always the first question. Why do you want to do this? Now, once we've kind of addressed the why, we need to also understand where we are starting from. Are you already in pretty good shape, but you want to improve athletic performance? Or you're really good at one thing, but you want to now, develop new skills in, say you were a runner, but now you want to learn how to swim better. Like, you still have to know where you are starting from in this new activity. What if you're just trying to get going? You've been kind of sitting on the couch and been pretty sedentary. Well, that's going to have a big impact on which exercises and which movements you start with. If you've been sedentary for years, well, it's going to be a really long, slow on-ramp to fitness, and that's okay. Remember, flash in the pan, quick results sure look good on social media feeds, but the truth of the matter is, if we're looking at long-term sustained benefit, we want slow and steady. Okay, slow and steady wins the race, right? And so getting clear on where you're starting and what your goals are will help you clarify your objectives. One of my old mentors used to say, fuzzy targets don't get hit. So if you're not clear on exactly what you're trying to do, you're going to struggle. And you might flit around doing this activity and this activity, but you won't feel like you're making progress. Now, speaking about progress, that's an important thing to consider. How are you planning to track your progress? We want to feel like we're making an improvement, right? And if you don't know how to track that, you might quit even though it's actually being really beneficial for you. So let's talk a little bit about how to track and measure progress when it comes to movement and exercise. The good news is that our bodies are absolutely amazing at adapting to the environment. So if we change the environmental inputs of exercise, it's going to respond. It's going to do something differently. It has to. We're counting on that adaptation. And whether that's for weight loss or muscle building or, speed or whatever else we're going to track. So we have to be able to figure out what the metrics are. Now, I would recommend that there are two or three or maybe four, I'll call them soft signs. These are things like, do you have more energy? Are you finding more mental clarity? Is your mood improving? What's another good one? How about, do your clothes seem to be fitting a little bit better? So those are just kind of soft signs, and they're a little bit harder to quantify, but as long as, even if you're just putting a smiley face or a frowny face around mood every day, there are still ways to kind of quantify these things and track them. Now, there are a lot of hard signs or more concrete quantitative things. Now, that could be something like VO2 max to measure your fitness level, cardiovascular fitness. It could be body composition, like your lean muscle mass and fat mass. It could be just a before and after picture or, calipers or some sort of thing to measure your body changes. So these are great. Now, if it's performance you're going after and you used to be able to run a 10-minute mile and now you can run an 8-minute mile, okay, there's another way to track progress. But make sure that you have a few soft signs and then a few kind of more concrete or hard signs to track your progress. Why? Because your brain wants to know that you're making a difference. You have to see progress, especially if it's difficult. Now, remember, our bodies are incredibly efficient. They don't want to waste energy. There's kind of a drive inside of us actually to conserve energy. So we're asking our bodies to move when they'd rather be sitting and not doing anything. So you have to have a little bit of motivation, especially in the beginning, in order to get some consistent habits built. All right, so we've got some tracking. We know how we're going to measure this. We know our big why. We know what our goals are. Now, what about this element of time? How much time do you have? And be really honest. It doesn't do a lot of good if you're already pressed for time, you've got 20 minutes available, and then you have an outlandish goal of, something that's going to take 3 hours of training every day. Okay, so you have to make sure that your time allotted is in line with your goals. There's a lot that can be done in a short period of time, which I'm going to get to. Some really cool science and some research that shows that you can compress a lot of benefit from exercise into short periods of time. So we're going to come back to that. But you still have to know where your time slots are in your day or be able to create them with some thought. All right. So of course, all those questions are going to be unique. Everyone's going to have different answers, and it's completely fine. You just need to know what yours are. Remember, just about anything that you do that keeps your body moving and keeps you active is going to have a positive benefit. The only things we have to really guard against when it comes to movement and exercise are injury and overtraining or too much too quick. And, both of those will create additional stress on the body as opposed to lowering your stress levels. Okay. Most of us are really busy and we're engaged in a lot of different activities. And so that's usually our excuse to not exercise. We just don't have enough time. So we're going to figure out, how do we compress a lot of benefit into a short period of time? If you really want to get your metabolic engines burning, you need to create a hormonal shift. You need to signal your body to shift hormones in a direction that is going to either build more muscle, become more efficient in burning calories, burning fat. Okay, we've got to create hormonal shifts. And that really goes to the idea that weight loss and improved body composition and improved performance is much more than just counting how many calories you're putting into your body. It's really about getting key hormones in balance. And those are the ones that are responsible for growth and repair and metabolic change. So now many people have been told for years that in order to burn fat, you've got to do long cardio exercise, like, hour on the treadmill or a long stationary bike ride, or, everything has to be long, slow exercise. And, you have to find this target heart rate zone so that you're in this fat burning. But the fact of the matter is that that's outdated research. There's a lot of new research that suggests that what our body's really good at is taking short bursts of high intensity exercise. And that short, intense exercise stimulates bigger changes in our physiology, in our metabolism. We call it burst training or interval training or sprint training. It goes by lots of different names, but basically you're going to take a few minutes to warm your body up, walking or, jogging or doing some jumping jacks or whatever it may be. You get your body warmed up, and then you do a series of intense intervals of speed or intense work, followed by a brief period of rest. And then you repeat and you repeat. And as you're doing that, you're monitoring how quickly your body recovers from that intense burst of training. Okay? So that might look like doing some jumping jacks or doing some push-ups or just, going on a nice walk to warm your body up, and then exercising at peak intensity for 30 to 45 seconds, and then taking a rest for 60 or 90 seconds, and then going after it again. So cycling on and off intensity with rest, intensity and rest. And when you do that, what happens is we create an afterburn effect, where even though the exercise is done, now your body's actually responding to that work over the next 24 to 48 hours. So let's dive into a couple cool research studies that looked into this phenomenon. One study came out of McMaster University in Canada. They looked at a specific type of exercise called sprint interval training. And in this study, this was young sedentary males. They were divided into the sprint interval training group, a moderate intensity kind of continuous training group, and then a control group who didn't do any exercise modification. Both of the exercise arms did 3 sessions of exercise per week for 12 weeks. This sprint interval training group did, listen to this, 3 20-second all-out sprints on a cycle, interspersed with 2 minutes of slower cycling. Okay. The moderate intensity continual training group, they did 45 minutes of continual cycling at about 70% of their maximum effort. Both protocols involved a 2-minute warm-up and a 3-minute cool down. And in case it's not clear, this SIT or the sprint interval training arm required just 1 minute of all-out intensity during a session. So 3 20-second sprints, all right, with the rests in between. So the entire exercise regimen only took 10 minutes. So that included the warm-up and the cool-down. So warm-up, intense bursts, a total of 1 minute, and then some breaks in between, and then 3-minute cool-down. So a total of 10 minutes, where the other group is doing 50 total minutes of exercise. Okay, so here's the results. The different approaches to exercise resulted in pretty similar effects on things like insulin sensitivity, skeletal muscle change, and VO2 max, which is a marker of cardiovascular fitness. Okay. Actually, though, the changes to skeletal muscle and insulin sensitivity were greater in this sprint interval group. So the study's conclusion says it all. 12 weeks of brief, intense interval exercise improved indicators of cardiovascular health to the same extent as traditional endurance training. despite a 5-fold lower exercise volume and time commitment. That's wild, right? Very cool. Now, you might be thinking, yeah, sure, that's young men. They respond to exercise well anyway. So, well, let's see if there's any other studies on this sort of exercise that involve different groups. And indeed, there is. How about a group of middle-aged menopausal women with type 2 diabetes? Okay, that's a totally different cohort from young sedentary males. Now we're postmenopausal women with type 2 diabetes. And once again, this study involved a similar comparison of short burst, short duration, high intensity exercise. This was 60 repetitions of 8-second bursts. So just a little bit different, but the idea is 8 seconds of intensity, a little bit of rest, and they did that 60 times, okay? A total of 20 minutes of exercise versus the other group doing 40 minutes of exercise at about 50 to 60% of their max capacity. Now, the study showed that the shorter, more intense activity had greater benefits than the longer sessions. The exercises were performed twice a week for 16 weeks, and the study called for no changes in the patient's diet at all, which is remarkable, right? These are people that definitely need to be getting dietary advice as well, but just adapting their exercise. The results were pretty impressive. Total body fat decreased, total fat-free mass, muscle increased in both groups, but a significant loss of abdominal and visceral fat was noted in the short burst intensity group that wasn't noticed in the long, steady, slow exercise group. So, newsflash, these women lost visceral and abdominal fat, which is key for people with type 2 diabetes, with shorter levels of exercise, a whopping 20 minutes twice a week, no change to their diet. So imagine what those results would have looked like had we been doing dietary change as well. I mean, really could have been remarkable with both of those, but proves the point that exercise, especially short bursts and intense exercise, are more powerful than that long, steady cardio stuff that was talked about a lot in the past. All right, so I'm making this big distinction between these different types of exercise, but I don't want you to get lost in the weeds there. Any exercise and movement is better than none. So just because you can't do one type doesn't mean you shouldn't do something. All right? It's best to do things that you enjoy. We have to figure out how to get over our brain that doesn't really want to waste energy and it doesn't want to do things that are hard. There's a built-in baseline efficiency model running in our mind all the time saying, why would I want to get up early and run? Until you get past that and you find that the benefits are so great that you actually enjoy it and you love it, and that becomes kind of part of who you are, it's a big kind of obstacle to get over. And so you have to start with things that you love to do, okay? So remember, when we're talking about movement and exercise, I'm going to give you 4 simple things to think about. Progress is more important than perfection. Progress is addictive. Your brain will fall in love with the idea that you're changing and improving. So remember, progress is more important than perfection. Okay, number 2, be really clear on your goals. Remember, if you don't know why you're doing something, if it's just nebulous, I want to feel better, or I know it's good for me, or something like that, it's not going to be motivating enough. So there's a motivational factor of being clear on your goals, but also just something very practical, like, are you trying to run a 5K? Well, then there's going to be specific exercise that's going to be more tailored to that. Are you looking to become a better basketball player? Well, there's specific things that you could do. So big picture why, and then also really targeted, like what are you trying to accomplish with exercise? And then find a plan that's going to tailor right to that. Number 3, remember we want to track our progress. So soft signs like how I feel, how my energy is my mind clear? Am I happier? Does my body look a little subjectively better to me in the mirror? And also some really hard signs like, is my personal record mile improving? Or, is my body composition changing? Can I do more pull-ups than I used to be able to do? Whatever the activity is, make sure you're tracking that you're improving. Okay, and then last but not least, make it joyful. You have to love doing it. I mean, you can suffer through some things, but not for long. So find the joy in the movement. It's much more important to love your exercise and love your movement and enjoy how your body feels and how it works than to look a certain way. All of those things are secondary. You'll get to those things with consistency that's born through your joy. All right, so that's a good place to wrap up for this week. I want you to think about movement this week. Think about your relationship with exercise. Is that a swear word to you? How do you want to change? What would that look like? What's a baby step that you could take? I've suggested a few questions that you could ask yourself today. So let's get asking the right questions, creating the right plan, tracking that progress, and finding joy in how your body feels and how it moves. All right, so that's it for today. Now, let's go out and do some good in the world today, and we'll talk to you next time.